Hello. We're going to do a quick, let's crank that up a little bit. We're going to do a quick GitHub tutorial. We're going to cover primarily three things. We're going to go over some of the general concepts. We're going to go over what the interface looks like on Github Desktop, and a little bit of the website as well. And lastly, we're going to go over some of the best practices that you can maybe try to do if you're going to be working in GitHub a lot. So if you're on PC, I think this might work on Mac too, but at least on PC, there should be a GitHub Desktop app. I highly recommend getting it. You'll notice that mine has the dark mode on it, which I think you should be able to change somewhere in here, probably under File Options, Appearance, but that's not as important. What is important is we kind of go over the beginning of, or some of the more basics of what GitHub is and what repositories are, stuff like that, because at least in my experience, a lot of that wasn't really explained to me. And I'm more of a visual person, so when it was explained to me the first time, I didn't get it, and I proceeded to break our game. So essentially, all a repository is, that's going to be here on the left, represented by this ugly tree branch looking thing. It's just a collection of files online. So to explain this horrific picture here, this red path, you can consider that like the main folder with all the files in it. That is usually called your master branch, or just like your master something or other. I should, by the way, preface all of this by saying I'm not an expert. This is just, I think, roughly 3 years of experience with GitHub now, so I'm just kind of talking through what I know. And this master branch is usually what is first created. Like here you can see it's kind of like your default branch. I'm also going to be using a game jam that didn't really go anywhere as an example, just because it already had some stuff that I wanted to show off set up. So don't worry about what like any of these files actually are. They're not going to be important. But when you first create a repository, you will get this, master branch, and it's going to be empty because you're not going to have any files in it. But if we go to GitHub, yeah, the world's leading thingamajig. There we go. I was going to say I don't... Oh, no. Sure. Hey, we got lucky. You can always just hit new repository here, and it's going to ask you if you want it public, private. You can initialize it with a readme, which usually isn't important. You can give it a name, like let's just say new project, best game ever. Description, optional. That's usually if you just have a lot of repositories. Generally, if you're adding someone to the repository, they're going to know what you're making. You do not want to make this private usually, because, well, unless you're making some sort of commercial product, in which case I'm sure your boss or manager will have instructed you, or you probably won't be the one making the repo. But in case you are, for like a home project, the important part you do want to do is this add get ignore. Here, if you're making an Android product, in this particular case, we're going to be making a Unity game. So you're going to want to scroll all the way down to Unity, which is right here. And this little .getignore file will essentially tell GitHub to ignore certain files that will change frequently, but aren't actually creating a big impact in the game itself, or in the project itself. In Unity's example, anytime Unity, or I should say rather, each file in Unity has a attached meta file with it, I believe, and that has metadata. That way, like, for instance, I have player, and I can also go, create object, rename player, and this is fine because the metadata can, these two, it can tell them apart. Probably not the best example, but my point is, you oftentimes change things, and those meta files also come along with that change, and this getignore pretty much tells GitHub to chill out. But if you create the repository, as I said, you'll get this red branch. And that's where every time you make changes, you're going to want all of your files to go to. However, that's what you're going to want, but that's not what actually is going to happen. Because once you create it, and by the way, you can do this exact same thing through here. I believe you can, create a new repository, and it's kind of the same process, Get your getignore, you don't really need to readme. You can kind of choose where to save it and all that stuff. Instead, what will happen is, when you actually create a repository through desktop, you're going to get this local version that pretty much only exists on your PC. I could be wrong about that because I think GitHub Desktop might automatically publish it, but what I'm trying to get across here is that there is a collection of these files that exists online on a server somewhere, and that's the stuff that you, your coworkers, your teammates, whatever, they can all access that. But then there's also a version of all of those files that exists on your PC, which is over here on the right, and this is kind of where we start getting into the meat of the quote-unquote tutorial. And this is only stuff that you can see. So in this particular instance, if we look at this interface here, you'll notice that there's only one branch, and in this particular case, this branch I've selected here is this particular red thing right here. It's not the one online, it's just the red one here. And the reason I know that is because if I look to the right, it'll be like pull origin, and I can see that there's 6 changes that have been made here, and if I click right here, which I'm not going to yet, it'll take all of the changes from, it'll take all of the changes from this red branch and try to put them over to my red branch. I say try because sometimes it won't work automatically. For instance, if the red branch online looks like this, because of, you added a gun here, and then you added a pickup here, and then you added a power up here, but my branch looks, like that, because after this pickup or power up or whatever, I stopped trying to, get the updates, and I started just doing my own thing. When we hit that pull button, it's going to try to just like merge these two, and then it's going to go, whoa, this one's way different from this one, which one do you want to keep? And that's actually, you might encounter this, they're called merge conflicts. And conflicts sounds kind of scary, but essentially it's GitHub's way of saying version 1 looks way different from version 2. We can't automatically change these things because, file A on this side and file A on this side look way too different, and it's going to ask you, the user, which one you want to pick. In Unity's case, oftentimes you'll see merge conflicts with scenes. So here I have Eddie's test scene, but let's say a teammate also goes into Eddie's test scene and goes, you know what, I'm going to move this M1911 like over here, but on my local version, my M1911 is still right over here. GitHub's going to go, whoa, 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 there's this change in this scene with this particular object. Which one do you want to take? And in that merge conflict, if you choose theirs, quote unquote theirs, aka the external change, in your scene, all of a sudden your M1911 is going to go bam. But if you say choose mine, you will not only keep yours here, but you will also enforce your version onto everyone else. So just to illustrate that, because my lizard brain likes pictures, again, if you have change A and change B and they conflict, if you have a circle and a triangle, GitHub's going to go, do you want to keep the circle or do you want to keep the triangle? If you say keep the triangle, it's going to go, okay, triangle's going to go over here, and now everybody gets a triangle. That circle's gone. The reason I'm harping on this so much is because whenever you have a conflict, you have to be super careful how you resolve it, because you can erase, like, weeks of someone's work, or hours, or days, or whatever, but you can erase other people's work, which, and we're going to touch a little bit on this in the best practices section, but generally, if you're in a project like Unity, it's really good to have your own test scenes. It's also really good to let people know which scripts you're going in, so that you're not both working in the same script. Usually GitHub's pretty good about, like, oh, you added lines in line, or like you changed the line in line 14, and then someone else changed the line in line 17. But sometimes, let's say if you add a bunch of lines, what used to be line 17 is now line 23, because, it gets pushed down. GitHub freaks out about that, and that's where you're going to get a merge conflict. Even though you haven't actually changed the code, if you just put in a bunch of white space, that can still trigger that merge conflict. So the best practice is usually partitioning off work to certain people so that you don't end up stepping on each other's toes. So we've kind of covered what a repository is. It's kind of the online version of all of your files. We kind of covered what the local PC version is. I mean, that's really self-explanatory. But we haven't really covered what these little bastards are, these little sticks coming out of the tree. Obviously, I mean, it's right here in English. They're branches. But what a branch allows you to do is it allows you to make risky changes in a safe way. So, for instance, let's say I wanted to make a code. Let's just assume we're making a first-person shooter. and let's say I want to make this pretty big change on how the player moves, but I'm afraid it's going to break our game, I can go into here, where it says current branch, and I can click new branch. And let's just say I'm going to do, I'm going to put my name down just so that people know who's breaking the game. I'm going to say it's coming from master, and I'm going to say, oops, new player movement. There's no, I don't think there's any official like naming convention to this. This is just the one we used on Capstone, where it's your name, what the origin branch is, like, so let's say I'm making a branch of a branch, and let's say we're making a, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll just say create branch. I have these changes here that aren't really changes, but that's fine. And we'll just bring my changes over. If I wanted to make a branch off of this, because this is the new player movement branch, I would go, you know, new branch, create a branch based on this one, and then I'd go Eddie, new player movement, just to tell people what the branch is based off of, and then say, you know, new player movement, or whatever. We're not going to actually do that because that's stupid, but just to illustrate a point. So what I've done here is I've created that new branch, and essentially what that actually means is I've taken the files, let's say we just created branch A for the sake of argument. I've created the files on my local PC as they were right here, like a snapshot of the files right here, and I've created a branch based on the files from here. The reason I'm saying from here is because, you know, imagine like everything up here doesn't exist, it's just this right here. If someone makes a change right here and I don't pull that change, and I go ahead and make a new branch, I will be making this extension right here, these changes, based on old data here. My point is, anytime you make a new branch from an existing one, like master, always try to get the newest version of master before making a branch. That's not always going to be possible because, you know, you're not the only one making branches here. Maybe someone else already made a branch, over here, and then someone else made a branch here, but they haven't exactly published their branches, which I'm about to go over in a second. You might be working with old data, but it's always best to try to get the newest, you know, pull the newest version of this red branch over before you start breaking off into it. And I mentioned publishing branches, and I can hopefully show this off right here. So I just made this branch. These changes actually, well, let's just keep them, but actually no, we can get rid of them. I'm sorry, discard all changes. By the way, super small little tip, anytime you discard changes and you want them back, they go right into your recycling bin, and you can open up your recycling bin, select them, right click, restore, and they go right back here. I cannot tell you how many times I've accidentally discarded hours of work by accident, and I just got them right back. So we made that new branch. Here it is, Eddie Master New Player Movement. Where does it exist in this like hierarchy? Well, anytime you make a new branch, it only exists on your local PC. And in this particular example, what we've done is we've essentially made this green branch. The reason I point this one out is you'll notice it's missing here, and that's because we haven't published it yet. It only exists on my computer. As far as I know, there's not really any advantage to keeping it just on your local PC. I guess if you really don't want anyone touching it, you can do that. But there's another safeguard to that. So pretty much anytime you make a new branch, you generally just want to publish that branch. And by pressing this button, what I've just done is I've just gone ahead and went, you know, not with that, but I just went ahead and took this branch and copied it over and pasted it right where everyone else can see it. Now there's an online version of it. And that's generally useful. The safeguard I mentioned is, you know, there's that worry of, okay, well now everyone can see my branch, anyone can go in there and just delete all my work. Technically they can, but that'll only be on their PC, right? Like let's say this is your PC, their PC is somewhere like to the left of this repository, like visually. Then they have to, after they've made that change, they have to try to merge their branch or push their branch, like their changes, over to the online version. And that can still happen. So for everyone else, that data can still be deleted. But until you try to take that data onto your PC is 100% safe. So that's kind of like the safeguard where, you know, this entire repository can get nuked and be completely on fire, can be melted down, whatever. But until you try to pull those changes, your local PC cannot be affected. Which is kind of actually, if we go back to master, if I hit fetch origin, oh, it might have automatically yoinked it, or I think I might have done it by accident actually when I made a new branch. But if we go to almost race, you'll notice there's this origin I can pull, and what that means is something's different here than there is here, right? What is this, master? What do I have selected here? Development 5. Yeah, so on my development 5 branch, there's a difference between the online version and my local version, and GitHub's telling me, hey, do you want to pull those changes? And I can just say no. I can just choose not to. That's usually not a good idea, because kind of what I said before, the more you kind of hoard your changes like a dragon and just kind of stay away from the main branch, the more, like this is the online path where everyone's contributing, the more your path kind of diverges. And when it comes time to try to merge these two, it no longer will be one line of code in a script. It'll be 50% of these files are different from 50% of these files. You're basically working on two separate games. These two won't really be compatible. What do we do? So I guess I'm kind of going backwards because I'm going over another best practice. It's generally a good idea to make a branch only when you have like a specific task in mind, like let's say putting in a new weapon, putting in a new feature in your game, fixing a bug or something. And once you're done with that, immediately try to merge the branch back into the master, like basically cannibalize the branch, and then down the line make a new branch for whatever new task you have. Don't just keep making branches off of branches off of branches, because as you do that, you are no longer getting this new data from like the master branch, and it's going to be nigh impossible to take this monstrosity and somehow merge it back to this point, that 15 other like blue and purple and yellow branches have already been merged into, changing the game or project significantly. And I think I might have implicitly explained what pushing and pulling are, but just to go over the terminology, when you pull, so let's say for the sake of argument, whoever's watching this video and I are working on this green branch. Let's say we're both working on player movement for whatever reason. If you tweak some values in player movement, let's say you make the player go twice as fast, and GitHub's like, and if you do that on your local and you quote unquote push that change over to the repository, so you pretty much take your changes and you push them over to the repository, then what will happen is this little thing will pop up saying, hey, on this branch, which, we can go back to this for the sake of argument, it'll say the one change is here. And if I click to take it, I will take your one change and bring it over to my branch, which is a pull. So I'm pretty much pulling the change from the repository into the local PC. Kind of a fool for not making this all smaller so I can have like another PC to the left of this, because that actually would have been much more useful, but that's okay. Oh, whoops. So that's what pushing and pulling is. Pushing is taking your changes and pushing them onto the online version of the files, the repository. Pulling is pulling changes from the repository to your local PC. And we already kind of went over conflicts. So that's kind of the general concepts. Hopefully that wasn't too insane rambly. Hopefully there was a little bit of a structure to that. But now we can actually go over the interface of specifically Github Desktop. We can go over the website a little bit, but generally speaking, you won't use it too much aside for pulling. But we'll get to that in a second. So, Mayjam, let's actually see. This should work. If I go into the GitHub, or I'm sorry, if I go to the Unity, whatever actually pops up. There we go. So, let's just say I want to make a new object here in this. Let's say cube. I'm going to rename it, or actually, wait, there we go. Cube. And let's just name it, let's just name it test cube. Test cube. Delete, and importantly, I'm going to save. We should, if I'm doing this right, hey, there we go. These changes automatically populated here on the left side, and it says 5 changed files, which is kind of weird because we only really changed one. We made a game object. I guess I actually had other changes that I didn't really see, but that's okay. So these are the 5 files we've changed, which, again, script NPCS, that's weird. These ones shouldn't really be happening. Neither should this one. Really, all we actually did is this top one here. So yeah, these don't matter. This entire project doesn't matter. Pretty much we added an object to a scene. And if you click on this changed file, you'll actually get the, I forgot what, it's not HTML, it's not XML. I forgot the type of code this is, but it's a nightmare. And it's very hard to read actually, you know, like English. But anything that's green is something you've added. Anything that's red is something you've taken away. And I think that's actually the only 2 colors you'll see. So clearly here we've added a game object, and this is a lot of the metadata that we don't really care about too much. You know, the name is test cube. You can see that here. It's not tagged. Nav mesh layered 0 because it's not using the nav mesh. Once you actually start looking at some of this stuff, you can read it. Here's the mesh renderer, box collider, but like render property 0, that doesn't mean anything to me. And the stuff we deleted, I'm guessing, is that second cube I accidentally duplicated and deleted immediately. So that's what that probably is. Yeah, because value 10, that was probably the 10th object we've made, and then I accidentally duplicated it, made the 11th object, blah, 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 we deleted that. So you can kind of get a sneak peek at the stuff you've made by just clicking the changed files, but you generally won't want to do that. These 2 things probably won't matter to you. It never has for me. So, and this is all compressed into a Unity scene change, because we've essentially just changed the Unity scene. And here's our test cube. Remember this cube for the future, because it will be important. Cool. So we're back. These are some of those meta files I was kind of talking about that Unity get ignore should be ignoring, but it's not, which is fine. So the next thing we have to kind of talk about is committing. And what that means is, if you go back to the picture, this is our branch, right, on our local PC, which is what we're working on. This test cube kind of exists as this like little nebulous cube right here. It's not on the branch yet. It's not even on my local branch, really. It's just kind of on my PC. Like, this is my PC, right? But it's not on the branch yet. So in order to put it on my local version of the branch, you have to commit it to the branch. So in order to commit something, because you can't just commit it, you have to give it a summary. Just say test cube added. And you can technically just commit it now, but it's kind of nice to add a description. Added a test cube for testing purposes. And this will appear on the website too. You can actually see the list of commits. And you can go ahead and click on that. So now what that just did is it took this nebulous floating little cube and went boop, and now it's inside of this branch. It exists inside of my local PC version of branch C. And you'll notice I can undo it if I really don't like it, which I do. It's nice. You can always also, by the way, go to history and see all of the things that you've added in the past, and you can even, I don't recommend this, but you can revert specific things. Like if I really didn't want to commit this, I could be like, yikes, I didn't want that. And actually, if I go ahead and do that, me reverting that will actually show up as yet another change. See, this little thing went from 1 to 2. So if I went ahead and tried to push my branch C to this branch C, I would first push the cube and then instantaneously also push like the opposite, like a negative cube, pretty much, to get rid of it. It's almost like hitting Control Z and then Control R, like undo and redo or whatever. So it wasn't really much point to me doing that. I may actually revert the revert, which is, I'm just essentially messing with the computer at this point. So it's not usually a good idea to do that, but this should illustrate a good point. So now there's 3 things that I'm trying to push to the repository version of what we're calling branch C, this green branch. And see, yeah, the scene reloaded a couple times. If I actually went back to Unity before I reverted the revert, the cube should actually have disappeared, I believe. But that's all well and good. We're pretty happy with this right now. We're going to go ahead and push this. And now, if anyone else, like let's say someone was working on master branch, if someone else goes to mine just, you know, to check out, hey, I want to see this really cool test cube that Eddie added, the second they go to it, they won't see it. They'll be like, are you crazy? Where's this cube? Because what they have to do is they have to click on fetch origin, and then they'll see 3 little down arrows, kind of similar to this little one little down arrow, they'll see 3 because there's 3 changes. And then once they pull my change, then they'll be like, oh, I see, Eddie's not actually crazy, there's the test cube. And just to kind of illustrate that this cube only exists on my branch, watch this cool shit out. We can go to master. This will freak out, and it'll be like, would you like to reload? And we do yes. And the cube's gone, because the cube was not part of, it's not part of, like, this right here. It's not part of the original master tree. And the same is true for if anyone is using the, on the online version, that cube also doesn't exist. But let's say my team checks out the cube. Everyone's like, wow, this cube, it's the thing. We want it. It's great. Don't worry about these meta changes. They're gross. Let's actually discard them. I regrettably don't know enough about GitHub to know why those meta changes happen sometimes. And it tends to be different every time. But so here's our cube. Everyone likes it. This is everyone's jam. We can now try to merge the branch into the master, kind of bring it into the fold, which is kind of what we're going to do now. So let's just pretend I'm done. That's all I really wanted to do with this branch. There's a couple of ways you can do it. I kind of want to show you the safest way. So what I mean by safest is, currently, if I try to merge C branch into the red, I have no idea if there's going to be conflicts. It might get mad at me, it might not. I might press a couple of buttons and just completely nuke the master branch and like break stuff. So what you can actually do, believe it or not, is you can try to merge master into C branch. Now, the way I worded that is a little bit not 100% honest, because you won't actually be taking master and like shoving it in here and then master no longer exists on your computer. You'll pretty much be taking a copy of master and putting it into your C branch. What that does is it keeps your branch that you're working on up to date, so that way some random change doesn't like come out of nowhere and create massive conflicts. And it also, if there are conflicts that were to happen, it's a really easy way to tell. Now, I don't think we will get conflicts, but the way you do that is you see this button that says choose a branch to merge into Eddie Master new player movement. If you click on master, you'll see this will merge 6 commits from master into Eddie Master, and because we have this little green icon here, or green check mark, that means we're actually good to go and there's no conflicts. Otherwise, a little window would pop up to show you that there's conflicts, and regrettably, I don't actually know a way to... No, I do know a way to cause some conflicts, but we'll do that in a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and merge. We don't care about that. That's just because we have an uncommit change. We can discard that. Again, that change, I don't know what it is, but it's not important. So on my version now, on my version of this branch, this C branch has all of this red also inside of it. This one doesn't. This repository version, the online version, does not have all of the red in it. So what I can do now, that's why I have 7 changed files, I can go ahead and push that now. And now the online version, this one, also will have all of this red up in here. It'll actually technically have all of this red, but that's fine. Let me just make sure. So if you go into pull requests, this is generally the way you would do it. Once you know that everything's fine and everything's merged, you go into pull requests, you go create a new pull request, and it'll actually take you to the website. There's currently no way, I don't think, of making pull requests in the desktop app, but this is pretty straightforward as well. You'll see these 2 drop-down menus on the left and on the right. On the left is the one that you pretty much want to have stay. So think of it kind of like which branch eats which one. You want in this current instance, we want C branch to go away and to just kind of become part of master branch. We want it to kind of be cannibalized, and so that we're done with this task, we're going to go back into the fold in master, we're going to go along, and then, oh, we have a new task, we're going to make a new branch. Pretend we're not there yet, though. We still want to get rid of C branch because we're done with it. So in that case, on the left side, we want master. On the right side, we want the branch that we want to cannibalize. And GitHub's pretty nice. It automatically tells you that you're going to be able to merge. If you're working in a big company or anything, they'll usually tell you that they're going to want some reviewers. And what that means is when I go testing a branch merge added sick nasty cube, and when you go create pull request, because you're able to merge it, those reviewers will also get an email about that. So again, there are no conflicts. If there were here, sometimes you can actually fix the conflicts in the website if they're not catastrophic or like too complicated. But what you do now is, now that you're here, you can go merge pull request. It's going to be like, are you sure? And then you go confirm merge. And now, technically, what we've done is we've taken C branch, merged it back into here. So, to be more specific, there now exists all of C branch's content right where it should be, right? We've kind of merged it back. What we haven't done yet is deleted C branch. And you technically don't have to. It's kind of good practice to do that. So if we go back to here, you'll see this little delete branch button. It's kind of a good idea to delete it. And you can even restore it later. It's not that big of a deal. But the reason you want to delete it is so that if I go back to Capstone, you don't get one of these going on. But it's really up to you. If you want to keep the branch, you can. You can even, instead of deleting it, you can just keep working on it. Like if you just want to have a branch that just says your name and you don't want to do it by task, and that's just a branch that you work on, or work in rather, then you can do that. But I think generally it's a good idea to delete branches once you're done with whatever task you're in. So you'll notice I actually still have the branch, but sure, whatever. This is just on my local PC, so the branch no longer exists here. This is gone, which is how it should be. And that's generally how you do some tasks in GitHub. You just make a new branch, do all your changes, commit them to your local PC. Once you feel comfortable with your local PC version, you push them onto the online repo, and then once you feel like you're done with the task, you just merge your entire branch into whatever your master is. Because honestly, sometimes you won't be working in a master. Like in Capstone, we weren't working in master. We were working on a almost like parallel branch to master, just to be safe. And we would periodically update the actual master. That's why it said development 5 here in Capstone. This development 5 is pretty much identical to master, but it was almost like a little safety version, just in case. And yeah, you just want to merge your branches pretty frequently. And now we're actually getting to the quote-unquote best practices section, where I talk about, I kind of already hit a lot of this stuff, but in terms of your naming convention, you'll see here in Capstone, we would usually go our name, followed by what the origin branch is, followed by what we were actually doing. You might actually see this weird origin thing on the left. That just means that I don't have this on my PC. It only exists in the repository. But you'll see development 5 and Thai billboard implementation are branches I have on my PC. So if I were to click one of these, it would, like, let's just say car values. It's getting that branch right now. It's thinking. Bam. And now car values also doesn't, because, car values, let's just say, was this branch. It didn't exist over here. When I clicked on it, it made a copy of it, and now it no longer says that origin word. So that's kind of the naming convention that we've used, and it's been pretty useful. The other best practice is just, anytime you can, just merging master or whatever into your branch to kind of catch those changes early, because it's much easier to deal with one merge conflict than it is 15, especially if the person that made the change is either no longer working with you or has moved on to another team or doesn't even remember what they did. So anytime you're in some branch, again, just for argument's sake, we're in this one, just from time to time, just merge master, just make sure you're up to date, have all the newest changes and stuff. And then if you're making your own repository, which if you are, that's great, just make sure to set up that git ignore. Again, it's really easy. If you do the new thing, just go down to whatever you're actually working on, and in our case it's Unity, but it might be something else for you. Generally, you won't have to worry about licenses. I mean, usually you won't have to worry about any of this because this is probably already set up for you, but that should be about the gist of everything you need to know in GitHub. So yeah, at any time you can see all of the commands. You might see people talk about just regular git, which I believe is, it might actually be called git command, I forget. There is this nightmare version of git, which is the original, which is just like a bunch of command lines on a command prompt. Don't worry about that. If you ever need to touch that stuff, there will usually be a dedicated programmer that will handle that, because there's like a lot more to this than I'm saying. You can do a lot crazier stuff. You can, like, if you're here in the timeline, you can find a way to, like, you know, Prince of Persia, Sands of Time your way back over here and like delete all of this stuff, but that's all super complicated and I don't recommend really getting into it. But yeah, that should be all. You should be good to go. And I hope this was remotely helpful and sane.